Hello, listeners. Welcome back to the Baseline Podcast. Today, I'm with Max Shainbrown. Say hello.
Hey, everybody. How we doing?
Yeah, and I'm Jacob Malouf. This is our first episode of the podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about music. That's the overarching theme of today. So, Max, can you tell me, what do you like about music? What different types of music do you like, and why do you like music?
Yeah, so I like to listen to a lot more older stuff, I would say. I do listen to some new stuff, but I wouldn't say I'm more of a rap kid. I definitely like more like psychedelics rocks. I always started with like 70s rock, and then I've kind of ventured into more of the American jam band scene. Big Fish fan. I like The Dead. I really like Goose. Bands like that. And then I also listen to some indie rock artists. Like I listen to a good amount of Jack Johnson, Tame Impala, Mac DeMarco, and stuff like that, but yeah, I dabble a little bit in the hip-hop, but I'm not the biggest fans of some of these new rappers today.
So, when you say new rappers or hip-hop kids, what is that referring to?
It's referring to, like, I'll listen to some of the more moderate stuff. Like, I'll listen to some Kendrick. I'll listen to some Kanye, but you go anything past that, anything close to drill, that's a
And what would you say our friend group or our generation, for the most part, listens to?
They listen to that new rap, that hardcore stuff. It's not like this stuff that you saw with Biggie and Tupac. It's not like even like Kendrick with something with depth. It's more of like, in my opinion at least, it's just this straight hardcore rap set, bar after bar, talking about the gang violence and everything like that. And I feel like that's definitely the main thing people our age listen to. And I get it. It's cool. It's tough. I feel cool when I listen to it. It's just, it's not my thing.
Okay. I can respect that. Me, personally, I love rap music. I love hip-hop music. I love all forms of music, but I especially love hip-hop music because the way it makes me feel. I feel like it really gives me that pep in my step that I love. And I definitely listen to it for a different reason that I listen to something like Goose or something like psychedelic or something even like electronic. I don't listen to these types of music for the same reason. So that leads me to my first question. What role does social media and platforms like TikTok play in introducing new music to younger generations and potentially making certain genres or artists seem cool?
Yeah, I think social media definitely plays a role in the fact that it shows people a lot of different artists that they wouldn't see. Like, for example, back in the day when you didn't really have more of an outreach, it was these were your artists and these is who everybody listened to. Now you see a much wider range of who people listen to. You see a lot more one-hit wonders because you'll have that one TikTok song that goes viral or that one Instagrammer that has a big post or whatever.
Yeah, and the medium for listening to music today is so much wider.
Much wider.
We have streaming services, we have TikTok, we have Instagram, we have everything.
In order to get started back in the day, the way you would have to get started is you'd have to play clubs in your local area, and then once you got big in your local area, then maybe you got a gig in the state, and then if you got a gig in the state, then maybe you'd get a stadium, and you go like that. Now it's you post a song online, and overnight you're the most famous person.
Yeah, I mean, do you think that's a good thing, or a bad thing?
It's a great thing. It's more exposure. It's more opportunity.
It's more music.
It's more music.
Yeah,
there's nothing wrong with more music.
Do you think contemporary society is more ingrained with music than it was back, let's say, in the 70s or the 80s?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah? You know, I don't know if I agree with that. I think that music was really a vital role in different social changes, social movements. I think some of these social movements go hand in hand. So that leads me to my second question. How do you think major historical and cultural events shape the musical preferences of different generations? For example, like, as I was saying, how the social movements of like the 1960s have influenced rock music, or the digital technology impacted our generation.
Well, obviously when you talk about technology and stuff like that, it influences how music is being created. Like, you go back to forever, and you always see the most popular thing was the new thing. So when you started to have stuff like rock in like terms of the Beatles in the 60s, they were the biggest thing because it was new. Same with Elvis. And then you could go to a band like Pink Floyd that started to come up with those new ways of recording, and that was the biggest thing. And then the same thing with Queen. And then you go the same thing as throughout history. So obviously, I feel like the technology side, people are always going to gravitate towards what's new. People like new. People don't want to hear the same stuff over and over and over again.
So what do you think about like the historical events in general, like different movements and how that has really propelled different music scenes?
I think that the way I always look at the movements is I feel like the hippie movement and the jam band scene definitely go hand in hand, and how it was like kind of music almost coincided with it, and how people started to become more relaxed. People started to become more free-flowing. You didn't have this idea of this, there had to be this perfect masculine man anymore. It allowed men to have more sympathy, and that's why you started to see that kind of dance music take the scene. It was more free form and stuff versus their cookie cutter. And I feel like music goes hand in hand with what's happening in society. I feel like it's more of that way. And how, because it's not that the music initiates something, it's that something happens or a change happens and music flows with it. Music is almost like a reflection, I would say.
I think that's a beautiful way of describing music, and I think that really one of the first examples I can think of is the 1920s with the flappers and the Harlem Renaissance, and how that propelled some type of individuality among culture.
Yeah, the whole jazz scene.
The whole jazz scene, and that just evolves and cycles.
You saw with everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And even today, I feel like that's still happening.
Yep, definitely, 100%.
In what ways do you think nostalgia plays into this whole music scene? And why do you think many people continue to cherish the music of, let's say, their teenage years or their early adult years, or even as they were a young kid?
Well, I honestly think this is a really hard question for me to answer, because in terms of the music I listen to, I associate, obviously I have a lot of memories with my music, but I didn't grow up with it in the terms that very rarely do I listen to something that for the first time I listened to it, came out a week ago. Like I very, very little of the music that I like to listen to, I was there when it was released. Like I was watching it. But I think in terms of nostalgia, it provides back to that memories. I'll never forget, I was sitting at a David Gilmour concert with my dad, and they were doing High Hopes, this song off of Division Bell, which came out in the 90s, and my dad was at the Division Bell tour, drove across the border. He grew up in Buffalo on the border of Toronto, and he drove across the border and went to the Division Bell tour and saw David Gilmour there, and then he was there with me. And even though, in reality, it's a great song, but it's definitely on the ranking list of Pink Floyd songs, nowhere near the top 10, and he was like, favorite song of the night.
It doesn't hit home
because he's like the favorite song of the night, and I was like, how could you put a song like that over Wish You Were Here or Time, which he played that same night? And he was like, I remember watching it when it came out on the actual Division Bell tour live with my friends, and I think that shows the nostalgia, because music, it brings you back.
So would you say, like, great music that you love are always associated, or most of the time associated, with those positive memories?
Yeah. I don't even think it has to do with great music. It's just music. There's like this David Grohl quote in his book, at the beginning of his book. I don't remember the exact quote, but what he talks about is how he can't go back and tell you the date of something, but he could associate the song of something in time, and how he looks at his life in different songs and different phases he had with music, and that's his association.
What do you tell the people out there that don't listen to music as much?
Listen to music.
But
also, everybody listens to music for different reasons. I know people that listen to more music than me, but are less into music, that know less about music, or that don't take it as seriously. And I know people that listen to a lot less music than me that also are really in depth. Everybody takes it differently, and everybody listens to different things.
That's the beauty of music.
It's for everybody to have their own, but to share at the same time.
So another related question is, how do genres evolve and intersect? For instance, how has hip-hop, electronic music, and pop music continually borrowed and influenced each other over the past few decades or over time?
So asking like how I think music evolves from one to another.
Yeah, how it bounces off of each other, how it samples each other, how it spirals into what it is today.
Well, honestly, I think that I believe music over time has become less complicated in terms of its actual musical structure. Starting with classic, easily like Mozart, the most complicated musical pieces.
Sure.
And then you go to jazz, which is complicated but not as much. And then you go to rock, and then you go to that new form, that 90s hard, more grungy rock, with like, for example, a band like Queen and the Foo Fighters, which is not like the Beatles, not in terms of complication. Then you go to the more like hip hop scene, and then the rap now. So I feel like music almost uncomplicates itself, but I feel like the way that they relate is it all just keeps evolving.
But I think that's a very closed-minded perspective. I think that not everyone that lives today is listening, or the new music that comes out today, it's not all rap. It isn't. Maybe that's the most mainstream, especially with our generation, but there's still music coming out today that's like, let's say, for example, like the new Charlie XCX album, Brat. That was the most complicated album I've listened to in a very long time, and it was mainstream, and it was popular, and it resonated with our generation. And I mean, I don't see someone in the 1990s or the 80s making something like that. Another example of that is the Discovery from Daft Punk. That was released in 2001. That was so... That shocked the world. The way that sounded was so revolutionary and so complicated that I don't see what you're saying.
I don't think it's as complicated. I think it might sound that way but in reality, with the technology, they're layering a couple beats.
So do you think that defaces or diminishes that the given music? Do you think
I don't think it diminishes music. When I talk about how it's gotten more simpler, I think the best songs are the most simple songs. This is nothing you can't. I understand where you're coming at and how it's almost looking down on it, but I don't think it's a negative. Why should that be a negative that it's more simple?
No, I agree with that.
But I understand there definitely are albums and there's are outliers, but I'm talking about in general, because you could also say the same thing for in the 60s was in 70s was that psychedelic rock scene the only thing that was happening?
Hell no.
No. In the 90s was that grunge rock the only thing that was happening?
No, definitely
exactly.
not.
So I understand where you're coming out with these arguments and these albums, but I'm talking about like in the general scene today, in terms of simplicity, is more simple than it was 30 years ago.
Okay. I like that. Speaking on a more contemporary lens, our generation usually, meaning Gen Z, is usually not as connected to the music of the past. Like, let me give you an example. My parents, they're big into the jam band scene. They love Goose, they love Fish, they love Grateful Dead when they were in their prime, and we just don't see that anymore. We don't see that love for this, even rock music in general. My question to you is, why is that? Where is that disconnect coming from?
Well, why do people listen to music these days? Tell me why the majority of our friends listen to music.
To get hype.
To get hype. To be cool. To feel tough.
And now, why do you think?
Because
why do you think those people back then listen to music?
I think they listen to music on a deeper level, to have a deeper connection with the song, to feel it. You could say all you want about getting hype and dancing to these new rap songs. You do not feel the song in your bones like when you listen to a Fish song or a Grateful Dead song. And it's just how it is. Maybe that's just me, but I feel like in general, and I feel like people don't resonate with the actual song. They resonate with certain memories with it, but I feel like the song, if it gets them hype, if it makes them feel cool and gangster, most of our friends, obviously this doesn't apply to everybody, then they like the song. And if something's slower, and if something's right away not great, or if something is more relaxed and a little deeper, and you have to dive a little deeper and have a real connection to it, then I feel like it's a lot harder for kids these days to listen to. And I think that also goes for a lot of things. You look at movies today, you don't see any slow movies like we saw back in the day. You look at a lot of things like that. Like, for example, I was talking to my history teacher about it. We were talking about Goodfellas, and he asked me if I thought a movie like that could be successful today. And I was like, I don't think people have the attention span for it. Because if you look at the first 20, 30 minutes of that movie, it's boring. But you have to sit through it to get through it. But people don't have the attention span anymore to do that.
They need action.
That's why you have, like, for example, these Avenger movies. They're all the same thing. They're jam-packed with action, with a nice ending and cool effects. Mm-hmm. If I feel like as society's gone on, whether it's because of social media or whatever, the attention spans definitely have gone down, and the deeper connection to art has definitely gone down as well.
Where do you think that comes from?
I don't know how to tell you, to be honest with you.
So, make a guess. What do you think?
I think societal norms. I think social media.
But you can't just say societal norms. Something needs to really propel those societal norms. What could that be?
Parents, I feel, have gotten a lot more relaxed. I don't really know why. I honestly don't know why. Because I don't feel that way. You know me as a music listener.
Yeah, and I know myself as a music listener.
I know you as a music listener.
Yeah.
And I know you love everything, but you cannot tell me that you have a deeper connection to some of this You genuinely think you have a deeper connection to some of this rap stuff than you do?
No, I don't.
Exactly.
No, I don't. I mean, I like this older stuff than I do the newer stuff, but for different reasons. And I think that's the beauty of music.
That's what it is. That's what it is. The reasons. The reasons people listen to music. That if we could discover why everybody listens to music, and there was a bunch of different options, then you could answer all these questions.
Yeah.
But everybody listens to music for different reasons, and everybody listens to different kinds of music for different reasons.
Do you think social media has been that primary factor for the switch in music taste?
I feel like, yeah. It's glorified trends. It's glorified trends. It's glorified people. It's glorified activities. I don't know. Definitely.
As a rock lover myself, and as you being a rock lover too, how can we switch that? How can we start like a movement, a new movement to bring back and resurge that rock, that music?
We make a quarter like rock again.
Yeah.
But then again, if people just like rock because it's cool, then what is rock?
I think people liked rock back then because it was cool.
I think people liked rock because I don't think they liked it because it's cool. I thought they liked it because it was grunge, because it made their bodies move, it made them feel a certain way.
Can't you say that same thing about hip hop?
I feel like it's a much longer stretch. Some of it, yes. When you look at some of these artists today that are absolute lyrical geniuses, and when you listen to their beats, they're unbelievable. Like Kanye and Kendrick,
J. Cole,
they're unbelievable. I have the perfect example. What's that Travis Scott song you played the other night, where you played that long version that he didn't release on YouTube, the original version? You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, in upstairs?
No, at my house a couple weeks ago. You played this long version of the song. I can tell you the name of it. I found it. But you played this long version of this Travis Scott song.
Oh, Skeletons.
Skeletons.
Yeah, sure.
You played the original version.
Sure.
And
it was jam-packed.
It was unbelievable when you listened to it all the way through. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And at the end, Clough asked, why would he not release this? Why would he not release that? Because it wasn't as fast, because it was slower, because it was deeper, and because it wouldn't have sold as much.
Probably.
That's the difference. That's the difference between an artist like... Because I guarantee you, if Kendrick or Kanye had that beat at first and they had the option, they would have chose the one that you played.
So why do some of these artists like Kanye and Kendrick have such a large discography of unreleased music that's beautiful music, but they choose not to release it?
I feel like, obviously, there's still a role with production companies and money.
Mm-hmm.
But I also feel like, why any artist? Do you know how many great Beatles songs were probably never released?
Too many to count.
That they didn't think they were great? The whole Let It Be album was scratched at first.
Oh.
Let It Be, the song, is now regarded as one of the greatest written songs of all time.
Mm.
It was very hard. I feel like I would, if you were an artist and your job was to choose which song an artist releases and doesn't, you would cry about it every night. You would stress out about which song you were going to choose.
So let's flip the switch a little bit and let's talk about how do economic and social conditions influence the type of music that becomes popular. For example, how might economic recessions or periods of social unrest spark a new musical expression?
Well, I feel like people are upset. They're going to listen to sad music. So obviously, if people aren't doing well, you're going to see them take on that more slow form music to make them feel. But I also feel like in terms of money, it's not like how it used to be. I don't think it has a big factor than it used to be.
Yeah, and I think
people don't have to go to a store and buy a record anymore.
Yeah, and I also think that's important that like Instagram and TikTok and all these social medias caters to what you like.
It's what you like.
It's what you like. If you like a certain artist, you're going to see videos and you're going to see music of that artist. I think that contrasts very well with, let's say, the Beatles. Like, with the Beatles, it doesn't matter if you were white, black, Asian, Jewish, didn't matter. Everyone liked the Beatles. Everyone listened to the Beatles, and I don't really think we see that anymore.
No, you don't see demographic bearing. You don't see artists that are crossing demographics anymore, or if they are, it's very few. You used to see, like, well, I always say this quote about the Beatles. It's like, and when the Beatles were around, other than obviously the first couple of years was a little hard because they were rocky, the parents or whatever.
Sure.
But by 67, 68, 69, every single person liked the Beatles. It didn't matter if you were a rich grandpa or a poor orphan kid, you liked the Beatles. You don't see that today. And so when I see people come up to me and they compare Taylor Swift to the Beatles, who Taylor Swift is absolutely massive, and she's probably the closest thing you have to it. Do you know any boys our age? How many listen to Taylor Swift? 3 or 4 out of hundreds.
I can count them on my fingers.
Count them on your fingers, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's I feel. That honestly, I feel could be one of the biggest issues with music today. Is something we don't share.
So let's discuss the tension between like musical authenticity and commercial appeal, and how do different generations value originality, innovation, and marketability in music.
What do you mean by that?
I feel like one of the reasons why someone like Taylor Swift is so popular is because of her commercial appeal. How she appeals to the like, in a money sense, she's doing what she can do to make money. I feel like the Beatles weren't as the same way. I think they really valued what they put out more than someone that's like a product like Taylor Swift. Maybe not as much Taylor Swift, but someone like Olivia Rodrigo or Ice Spice or industry plants like
Olivia
that.
Rodrigo is definitely a better example.
Yeah, I
feel like there's a lot of artists today that are artists to make money. And I'm sure there were back then, but definitely not as much and definitely not as big.
Yeah, definitely not as big.
Like, yeah.
Well, I mean,
that's crazy to think about, that you literally have artists today that do not care about the music they're producing whatsoever.
No.
Whatsoever.
And honestly, with the younger generation, I look at my sister, she's in 3rd grade, and I look at her little tiny playlist, and it's all like the most popular TikTok sounds of 2024, and it's these almost fake sounding songs that are there for clicks. They're there for clicks. They appeal to someone like Skylar, and they appeal to someone with a low attention span, and they're good at it.
And what's crazy about the whole social media thing is it controls your music taste. If Instagram decided for you that you were going to start liking whatever kind of music, let's say
Billy Ray Cyrus,
and that's all they put on your feed with these cool videos and these cool trends of other people and celebrities doing it, eventually you would like it.
Yeah.
It literally controls how you listen to music. It controls everything. How you listen to music, how you think. It's crazy. If Olivia Rodrigo was never on any of these social media platforms, and never on Disney Channel, and never controlled by these big guys in Hollywood or whatever, and never pushed out to the public, and it was just her music, and you went up to a girl today and you said, listen to this song, you played Olivia Rodrigo's most listened to song, they would not feel the same way about it as they do now.
I completely agree, Max. Now let's take a step back and think about more on a more global scale. Do you think this is going on in other countries where, let's say, that aren't like America? Let's say like in the East, like with different like Asian countries and different like in India and these more obscure countries when you compare it to America?
No, I don't. I don't think the technology. I mean, obviously, in countries where technology isn't as advanced, I feel like they're definitely a lot more old school, a lot more pure when it comes to music. Obviously, you look at some of these European countries, it's the same. It's the same exact.
It's the same thing, yeah, no.
But yeah, definitely in the underdeveloped countries, you see that less indoctrinated music taste.
And I think sometimes current artists like to take the best pieces of some of these songs from, let's say, Africa, and they like to piece it together, take the best parts out of the song, but strip the life out of it, and loop it and sample it in a certain way that sounds more like today's rap or today's pop, and market under their own.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. A lot of ripoffs like that.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of stuff like that.
So, is that necessarily always a negative thing, though?
No. It's like, what's wrong with sampling music? Obviously, I think it's messed up on a personal level. You take somebody's song and you make it your own and you say it's your own. But if you credit somebody and you sample their music and you change it up and you release it to the world, there's nothing wrong with it.
It's cherishing music altogether.
It's cherishing music.
Now, do you think that?
Do you know how many songs there? You know, the other day I found out that one of my Twist and Shout, the cover by I didn't even know it was a cover by the Beatles.
Mm.
And then I also saw this interviews of these guys that wrote it. They were the Isley Brothers, and they were talking about how happy they were the Beatles covered the song and how it gave it to the world. Yeah. I think it's messed up on the money note that there's some guy living in a shack in some third world country whose music's being taken and being profited off of. But
that's how the world is.
That's how the world is. On a musical note for the world, it brings out music to everybody. Yeah.
So that's our episode. That's what we got. Tune in next time for more.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course, anytime. We'll definitely have you back in the future.
We'll do it again.
Yeah.